I know that Bill's aware of the meeting.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that. Right.
Yes, ma'am.
So I will call this meeting of the Policy Committee to order. It is August the 11th, 2020, 9 o'clock. Before I ask for approval of the agenda, I would like to move that we add a discussion about the policies that are to be presented tonight for first reading. So if I can, I'm moving that we add a discussion time for tonight's agenda for policies. And I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, those in favor of adding to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that's Bill, Nelson, and Jeanette. Okay. Deborah?
Well, you just need to do a roll call vote for a remote meeting, just a reminder. But you listed everyone, so.
So that works right now?
Yeah.
All righty. We have,
for now, and then we'll do that for going forward.
all right, thank you. There are 30 policies on for first reading tonight. That's just not the way we should do it, in my opinion. Many of or 5 of them are going to take a lot of discussion. So I'm asking that we can adjust the agenda tonight, that we only present at least 15 of the policies. Some of them are a fast read, but some of them are new. And I think about, we'll have at least 3 new board members and a new superintendent, new assistant superintendent for HR. And I don't see a need to rush through all of these policies. We were told when the service was offered to us, it would take 2 years or more. At this rate, we'll be finished by December. So I just think we need to take our time, give the board members time to review all the agenda of the policies, especially with the hurricane and things going on. Some people just have not had the time to spend that they would like to. Also for our administrators to be able to weigh in, as Deborah and I talked, we just need to take more time, I think. So what do you think, committee members?
I think in this instance, I think it's just a lot of those policies are the Title IX policies.
Well, those we are going to spend a lot of time with tonight.
We hope, yeah, because there's not much we can do with those. I don't know.
Right.
I just feel like these are important enough to push through.
Oh yes, those 5, the last 5, we'll spend time with them and ask for a waiver to get them in place because of the deadlines that need to be addressed. So, but if we could just take the first 25 and just present 15 of them, I think it's only fair to the public, because they may for the first time be seeing them tonight and would like to weigh in on some of the topics. Probably not, but we want to give that opportunity to them. Bill?
Yeah, I mean, Bill, what do you think? I feel like we should kind of push these 30 through, but I'll go with whatever Bill says.
Well, I mean, how long is it going to take us to do 30?
Depends on who asks questions and how much.
Yeah, I don't want to be here until 4 o'clock this afternoon and have a meeting.
No. We're going to finish by noon today for sure, no matter what. But I'm saying for tonight's meeting, because it is a long meeting tonight.
Yeah, it is.
And 30 policies may take a lot of time. And then we have second reading policies as well.
Y'all pull the trigger on that one. I'll go with whatever y'all decide. It's just one of those, it's just gonna be a long day.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
We had talked about doing a work session and adding that work session kind of to our regular rotation of meetings. Since you have such a lengthy set of policies, and it looks like that will be the case going forward. Well, first of all, I would like to ask the NCSBA, if you continue at this pace, when would you finish? So I think that's a very good question.
2 years.
Okay, so if we're going at this pace that we're going now, it's still going to take 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I would say then is, it may be that these policy meetings are going to have to take, a rather lengthy amount of time, but maybe what we could do is look to divide up the policies between the regular meeting and a work session. So you don't have to take it all in one chunk at the regular meeting. And we just set that work session for every month. So then it's not so, I guess, mind numbing for the public, as it were. What do you all think of that?
I think that's a good suggestion.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying you want to go forward with all 30 tonight?
Well, you could either go forward with all 30 tonight, or we could set a work session for tonight, or we could start this process for next month, for September. And I don't know if you want to, I'm hesitant to then push these to next month, because then you're going to have a bunch next month and you're going to overcrowd next month. McKenna, hearing these options, what would you suggest?
If you're expecting that you're going to get a lot of questions and it's going to take a lot of time to get these through the board meeting, then having 2 meetings, like having a work session and having the meeting, makes a lot of sense to split them up. As for what you want to do tonight, I don't, if you're going to do a work session next month, then if you want to put these off and do these in the work session and then do the next bunch at the regular meeting next month, or vice versa. I mean, today we don't have that many policies, so it won't be that many policies for next month's meeting. So putting them off wouldn't be so terrible.
Lisa, you're not suggesting a work session this month, August, are you?
No, I was thinking more of September, because we have a shortened month this month.
Yes.
And we got a lot going on. So I think if I were to suggest another meeting, probably most of senior staff would, kidnap me and dump me somewhere in the middle of the night. So no, I think probably September would be a good time to start it. So then you take it in chunks, all the policies that you work on, or you look at what the policy load is, right, for the month. And then if you've got 30 policies that you've worked your way through, cranked your way through, then you do that in 2 sessions. So then we set that work session for that month. So that's just my thought, so that we're not foreshortening what we have to be working on, because at this rate, if it's going to take us 2 years, that's a lengthy time to work through the policy manual. I'd rather try to get through it and have those longer policy meetings, but then divide it up when we're presenting it to the public.
Well, actually, 3 hours is quite sufficient, I think, for a meeting. The last time when we went to 1:35, we were drained.
Yes.
Yes. So that's not productive time. So then we're saying, Bill and Nelson, that we will present 15 of the policies, but last 5 on the agenda will definitely be presented, and so actually we'll be doing 20.
Right.
So we can change the agenda tonight and hold those off until September. And then the ones that we approve today for first reading, we'll add to that. And so that should balance out. Okay?
Jeanette, does everybody have a copy of the policies?
They're online.
Okay, so
Some people probably won't read them.
right.
Well, see, not until tonight when we start talking about it. And then
Yeah, if we could breeze through 15 or 20 and you know, everybody didn't ask 50 questions, I wouldn't mind getting the last 10.
Well, there's going to be some. Jeanette, which ones do you think are going to generate conversation?
well, certainly 5400, which is the naming and renaming of schools and facilities. That's that's the end, toward the end after the Title IX policies. So that will take some discussion. But I'm saving that one. I'll put that on there, and that we're asking to have it waived first to get it in place, but
Yeah.
we don't have to. So, but I did promise Dr. Burns we'd have it, and we do. So, so what are you saying, that we start presenting, and if there's not a lot of discussion, we just keep going?
Yeah, I mean, if we get to the end of the 15 or 20 and kind of breeze through it, go ahead and knock the other 10 out. But if it's long, we'll put it off until the next special meeting or whatever.
So that's kind of what I was thinking. Let's see. There's no reason we can't stop if it's taken a long time. If 5400, if that conversation takes a long time.
Well, then should we start, Deborah, with the Title IX and the 5400 and have that, because those are the ones we're going to ask for to be waived, and then introduce the other policies?
Well, I certainly recommend that the Title IX policies get approved tonight. I think that's very important. And
Yes.
I know that the 5400 is important to the board and the community. So, you know, you could always set a time. I must feel that you might want to decide ahead of time what is going to be on the agenda for discussion, and instead of you know, sort of waiting and dragging on. It puts you in a difficult position in the spur of the moment to have to, you know, change on the fly, so to speak. But that's certainly, if you want to try to push through, that's certainly something the board can do.
Well,
Deborah, could you, when we get to Title IX, could you please just emphasize, or Jeanette, when it's introduced, that there's not a lot that we can do with it? That these are federally mandated guidelines, and we can't really, I mean, because some of our board members think they know a lot about a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And
So
they might try to change it.
Right. For the Title IX policies, Jarrell Lewis, your Title IX coordinator, and I spent a lot of time looking at them. You know, we received them from the School Board Association, and they spent a lot of time making sure they're compliant with the federal regulations. And then Jarrell and I spent a lot of time on these policies. So I certainly will recommend that there not be any changes tonight to the policies, that they be adopted as is. I think that they're all compliant with the law. They're going to match the procedures that have been recommended by your Title IX coordinator. So I can certainly emphasize that.
Thank
So, Madam Chair, can we put those on for first
yes.
discussion? Okay.
Yes. And that way, I still think if we divide the others up, I know that Deborah uses the term push through. I don't want the community to think that we're just pushing through our policy manual. And plus, it will give Dr. Faust more time to be involved and being introduced to the policies and understanding them. Because he's going to be busy, but this would be helpful to him, I think. So let's compromise. We'll do the waive policy first, and then we'll do the last half of the others. And
Sounds
then we'll
good.
have a second meeting in September, and the policies that we approve for first reading will add to that, so that we still won't have more than 15 at that time. How's that?
I'm good
Okay.
with that.
All righty.
Miss
So-
Nichols, so
Yes.
how many, where would you propose getting to with the 2000s? Which number?
If we go, because I think policy 5400.
I can't hear you, Jeanette.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the policies here. I'm saying I think that policy 5400, naming and renaming of schools, will take some time. So if we go to policies 1 through 15. How would that work?
Ms. Nichols and board members, if you did there are 6 policies that are being requested to waive first reading, the Title IX policies and 5400. If you work through 15 after that, in the main points, that would take you through policy 2430. And then you could reserve the remainder for your next meeting. That would be 15 plus the 5. They're being
Yes.
requested for waiver. 2430 would be your stopping point.
Absolutely, that's 15 of them. And that way we can then get 2500 option A on the agenda, because it's still, as of last night, was not changed. It still had option B on there.
Thank you.
So we'll stop at 15, after 15 tonight, right? Or 15, okay? All righty. Now we can. So do we have to vote on that decision on Deborah on stopping it after 15 and rearranging the agenda for tonight or not?
Well, I think since they're already on the agenda for the regular board meeting, then that could come as a motion at the meeting tonight to only go through so many.
Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, and there is a need to make a change in those minutes. Under item number 4, policy updates, option 2500 B should say option 2500A. So we need to make that change. And then I'm not sure, McKenna, how we get that option A listed for our next board meeting, because somehow I still couldn't get it changed. So the policy that the board members are looking at is option B.
Who posts them? on
I
the
don't
agenda?
know, because,
Ms. Nichols, we can take care of that. Kim Joy and I will make sure that is adjusted.
okay, because I have emailed several times about that, but I guess because there's a different change in right now, missing Tabitha, it's hard to keep it all in place. Okay, so with that change in our minutes, I need motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes. Mr. Boyer.
Second, Bill Robinborg.
Those in favor of the approval of the minutes,
Aye.
say your name, please.
Bill Robinborg, aye.
Nelson Boyer, aye.
Jeanette Nichols, aye. Okay. The minutes are approved as changed or amended. Now we're to the policy updates from the North Carolina School Board Association. And so that would be McKenna.
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay, so today we're actually not doing a whole lot of them. We have a couple of policies that were tabled in the twos from prior meetings, and then a few other policies that have to do, that are related to the Title IX, but they're not Title IX policies, but they may be referenced in the Title IX policies, so you probably want to get those adopted. So we can start with 1730. All right. And this is just a basic non-discrimination on the basis of disabilities. I mean, this is just summarizing federal requirements. There's really not much in here that you can change. It's just a summary of federal stuff.
McKenna, Deborah, I meant to ask when I saw these, should we look at waiving first reading next month for these corollary policies to Title IX?
Deborah, what do you think?
Well, and I don't recall whether, I don't have the correlation table right in front of me. Is there already a non-discrimination disability policy? McKenna, do you have that?
I think they have just generic, like, we won't discriminate on the basis of sex, disabilities,
Yeah.
but I don't think they have this much detail, and I don't think they have information about the coordinators either.
No, we don't.
So the coordinators' information is going to be in the policies that are being adopted tonight, the 504 and the ADA coordinators. We do need to fill in a couple of the other coordinators, and I think Dr. Burns is going to be working on getting the names or contacts for those. But I don't know that it needs to waive first reading if you have already something in place, but I can certainly take a look at that and recommend it when we get to next month's meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think this one's that important, but your grievance procedures you're going to want to put in place, but you also may want the public to have time to see them. So does anyone have questions about this policy?
No.
I didn't.
All right, the next one is 1740.
McKenna, could I suggest that you review 1750 first?
Oh, sure.
And the reason is that one you have added some language from the current policy, but it's really parallel to the student policy. And so I think it's helpful for the board to examine this one and see which parts of the language from the existing policy they want to keep. And then I think it needs to be parallel language in the student policy. And just an example of that is there was additional language around retaliation, and there's a parallel provision in the student policy. So if it's kept in this one, it should be, I think, also added to the other one. That's just my recommendation.
Yeah, so these are the two grievance procedures that you need. Currently you have a grievance procedure for employees, so that's why there's a lot of information and track changes. That the information in track changes is stuff that I took from your old policy, your current grievance procedure for employees, and incorporated it into this policy. It didn't seem like you really had much of a grievance procedure for students and parents. There was one policy, but it didn't really have a lot of information. So that 1740 is the grievance procedure for students and parents. And that's what Deborah's saying. It is very similar to this one, but this one has a lot of custom information from your old policy.
So are we going through this one page by page, or assuming that this is what we need in our policy? I'm looking at, if you will, page 3, under number 7.
Yep.
Why did we delete the last part of that last? However, if the grievance is to be represented by an attorney, why did we take that out?
Because your current grievance procedure says that the grievant may only be represented by an attorney when they go to the board. Your current policy doesn't allow grievants to bring an attorney to meetings prior to their appeal to the board.
Okay. And on page 4, and Dr. Burns may help with this. I understand we're not going to have a director of human resources. Of course, we don't know what Dr. Faust will say.
That is correct. Under the organization currently, there is an assistant superintendent, and that would be the person that would serve in the role of director of HR as described in this policy.
So everywhere we've taken out or marked through assistant superintendent, then we need to put that back in and take the director out.
Correct.
So that's throughout this policy.
Okay, so you want to change Director of Human Resources to Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources?
Yes, is that correct, Dr. Burns?
Yes, ma'am. There is no director of HR. Those responsibilities are absorbed by the assistant superintendent, the investigator, and the supervisors.
Isn't that person currently acting as the director? Isn't that language vague enough to allow for the person in charge of human resources to assume those duties? By leaving it as director, I feel like if for whatever reason in the future, the deputy or the person second in that role has to assume those duties, we don't have to change the policy. There's still somebody to go to.
Director seems to me to be more of a title. And I understand you're thinking of the person who directs HR, perhaps. It could be the assistant superintendent of HR or designee, if that's the approach that you're interested in following.
I think that works better than saying director.
Yeah, that works.
But are you happy with the process here, though? Is this the correct process that you follow?
Yes.
Yes, I was.
I had a few questions about this, if you don't mind my butting in.
Please.
In the mandatory, well, let's go back. So the section E5A1, talking about the appeal to the board, it says that the appeal must be submitted to the board attorney and board chair. And I think that may have been appropriate when you had an in-house attorney. I'm not sure that someone wanting to file a grievance necessarily knows how to file something or submit something to outside counsel and the board chair. I think, saying that the appeal is submitted to the board would be sufficient. Typically, the board's clerk would accept documents on behalf of the board. So I don't know if there are any thoughts about that. And then
I think that's a good point. I think just saying the board there would be better.
Yeah. And then there was also in the next section, the appeal will be heard by a hearing panel of at least 4 members. And then later on for discretionary appeals, it says there will be a 3-member panel. And I do think that all of that language in your old policy was in place before you adopted or got to policy 2500 of having an actual hearing procedure. It seems a little redundant to me to refer to policy 2500, but then have some additional specific requirements for these kinds of grievances. So my recommendation is if the board is adopting a very comprehensive hearing policy, that those sections really are not necessary and revert back to just the standard language of the hearing will be conducted pursuant to policy 2500.
That makes sense.
And then in policy or section E5B2, which is about the discretionary appeals. And this is where someone doesn't have a right to appeal to the board, but the board can decide whether or not to grant a hearing. And section 2 says the board attorney shall send the petition to all board members who shall review the petition and included documentation and decide whether to grant the petition for a hearing. And that just seems to me to be vague enough to suggest that the board could decide that outside of a meeting. Like the board attorney sends it to board members who then review and decide. And really that's a decision that can only be made at a board meeting. As you all know, board members cannot just decide something by being contacted. So that section bothered me a little bit as well.
How would you rewrite it?
I frankly think that just deleting deleting the changes to the school board association policy that were sort of that she incorporated in from the existing policy, and then just going back to the language of the school board association policy, which says, so you would just delete the last sentence of delete the changes in section B1 and delete the changes, or go back. Full board will be meeting within 2 weeks. The board will decide at that time whether to grant a hearing. Otherwise, the board chair will appoint a 3-person panel to review the request. I mean, to me, that seems like a very workable process. But again, it's up to you. That's just a concern that I had when I was reviewing it.
I think those are 3 excellent suggestions. I don't have any problem with any of those.
Ms. Nichols and board members, I'm thinking about the discussion so far about to whom information is submitted, and the idea that things are a response is submitted to the board, even though it would be understood that the board clerk would be the person handling that. Would it be helpful to a member of the public to know specifically who on the board, such as the board chair, would be the person to whom it be submitted? That way, it would not be a matter of 7 members receiving something and then discussion about what do you have to do, what's the next step. I don't know if that would be helpful or not.
The easier we can make it for people, the better it'll be.
Because they're already upset and nervous and worried.
So who would we designate? The board chair?
That would be my suggestion. And then of course the board chair would forward it to the board clerk, and the board clerk and or superintendent together would handle the arrangements from that point forward.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sounds good to me. Lisa doesn't really have anything else to do.
Yeah,
I have no comment.
so, and since we don't have a board attorney, again,
Well, well, we do. We should just
yeah,
existing in a different space.
yeah.
You know, but I really don't like that. Anyway, I don't like the idea of submitting it to the attorney. I don't know. It feels, I just feel like some people would be intimidated. You know, oh, an attorney, no.
No, I agree, Mr.
No
Billy.
offense, Deborah.
No, I agree with you completely. I think that the board's attorney gets direction from the board, not, as an interface with the public necessarily. The only other, and so I think for section E going, really going back to that more standard language from the School Board Association, except certainly if you want to keep that additional step of response between, before the superintendent, there's a section of response by the director of human or the assistant superintendent of human resources. That's fine. It does also say that grievances must be in writing on the school system's grievance reporting form, but it does not say where that form can be obtained.
Deborah, if I could add, that is a carryover from the existing policy where there is a process. The form is available in the superintendent's office, and that process has served as a somewhat substitute for a grievance procedure. I'm not sure that a specific form is necessary.
I agree with that.
And so that way you can write you write a letter and you describe the components of the letter, what should be addressed in the letter or email or whatever it might be. And that takes out a step that I think would make it, again, easier.
Yes.
I agree.
Okay, so we'll get rid of the reference to the form. Agree. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Burns.
So back down here though, did you agree? Do you want the appeals to the board to be submitted to the board chairperson?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Frank, isn't that what we agreed?
And then what about all of the other suggestions about do you agree that, do you want to do in 5B2 use the school board association language about when you receive the discretionary appeal, how you're going to decide what to do?
Which was, what page was that?
7, page 7.
Let's see. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So when you have a 3-member or a 2-member panel, how do you then, do they present to the full board so that you have a quorum of vote? We've always had at least 4 members on these panels, so I'm confused.
Well, again, I think that all of this language about hearing panels would not be necessary now that you have, or once you have policy 2500 that specifically talks about how hearings would be held. If you are allowed to have a panel and required to have the full board, then the panel makes the decision for the board. The panel's decision is the decision of the board. So if it's a 2 or 3-member panel, that is the ultimate decision that that is made. It doesn't have to come back to the full board.
Okay, because in the past, when someone couldn't make the hearing at the last moment, then we had to wait and present it to the full board, the decision of the 3 members that were there. So this is not, it's unfortunate we don't have the 2500A in place to, but anyway, okay, so this works.
I'm good with it. I don't have anything else on there.
I'm good.
So, can't let it. Under 6, why did we change that from 30 days to 20 days?
I'm sorry, what? Oh,
Number
because
6.
that was what your current policy says.
Okay. I like 20 better.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on there? Committee members, Lisa? Dr. Burns?
No, ma'am.
Looks good.
Okay, a lot of changes on this one. So do we, as the committee, need to see this, all the revisions and look at this again at the next policy committee meeting, or look at the revisions and then present it for first reading at our next meeting, board meeting? A lot of changes.
I think we can, I mean, we'll see it before the meeting. If there's a problem, we can pull it off the agenda.
Okay. So it should give us plenty of time before September. Okay. All right. The next policy is 1740.
Yeah. So this is just our, the NCSBA's standard version, because you didn't really have any specific information.
And so I think the question for the committee is, with this policy, is whether you want to mirror the changes to the standard school board association policies that are in the other one. I mean, some very simple ones like changing working days to business days, adding that additional language around retaliation, not allowing an attorney except at the final board level hearing. So the question is whether you want to make those these 2 policies really very, very much parallel each other.
Yeah, well, what would be the downside of not doing that? I think they should mirror each other as close as possible.
I think so too.
Okay.
Is there a downside in doing that, in matching them?
Nope.
All right.
So yeah, I can make most of the changes. So, well, you're not gonna have it go to the assistant superintendent for human resources, correct?
No.
Okay. So yeah, I can make most of this stuff though.
So on page 5, number 5, would that 30 change to 20 days?
Yeah, we can change all of that information, like the hearing stuff, to parallel the other policy.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll make all the changes that are applicable. I mean, some of the stuff isn't going to apply because it has to do with it has to do with who the person's boss is, supervisor, or HR director. So that stuff won't be put in this, but otherwise, yeah, we can make all those, we can have it the same.
Okay.
Ms. Nichols and board members, upon the approval, second reading of the student and parent grievance procedure, it'll be in the future, of course, there would be a great need for training for principals, assistant principals especially. This is very different than the process that's in place now. It's much more prescriptive, and it is quite a change. And so I'm thinking whenever this is approved in September or October, whenever it might occur, that would be very important, I think, to be sure that there is that training that's included. And I made a note, and I'll certainly leave that for Dr. Faust, and make sure that that's something that is considered going forward.
Dr. Burns, how long do you think training would take? Is there a way we could leave the current grievance process in place for a few months? Because I don't want to.
Well, you don't have a grievance process. What you have is a public concern form that's completed, sent to the superintendent's office, and then there's no well-defined process beyond that. So what this does is it creates a pathway, it creates a process, and this is very typical in school systems, to have the process starting with the principal for students in this case, or parents grieving on behalf of a student. It starts at the building level with the principal and is very prescribed. It serves to make sure that any resolution can occur at the lowest level. That's what you want, as opposed to the current situation, which takes it to one of the highest levels, not the board, but just before that with the superintendent. So my suggestion would be, when you get this approved, that and there's no reason that training can't occur between first and second reading. It would not take long. I think it would be wise to involve the board attorney, other senior staff members, working through this. I think that would be a course that I would want to take if I were going to be here at the time this is approved.
So, Dr. Burns, that was my question. Who would be able to do the training, to administer the training?
I think Deborah Stagner. Deborah certainly can, or a member of her firm. It's not in great detail, but also it's awareness and it's understanding the steps and how to handle this. And moving to a grievance is there's a bit of a judgment here in terms of how this is handled. A concern, for example, over a student's grade on an assignment could be a matter for resolution at the building level, or it could turn into a grievable matter in some cases. And trying to keep things resolved at the lowest level is important. So the awareness by administrators at the building level, senior staff, I'm thinking specifically of Dr. Smith, Deputy Superintendent, Al O'Brien, Director of Secondary Ed, Jackie Jethro, Director of Elementary Ed, supporting principals as they might work through a grievance procedure. All of that can occur. There need to be some work initially with the staff members before working with the building administrators. It would not take a great deal of time, but I do think, given the manner in which this particular process works compared to the current process, it is preferable to move away from the current process as quickly as you can.
So would it be appropriate to start developing the documents for that training even now? Because I don't anticipate this not passing.
It would not be hard. Deborah, I'm speaking for you. Would you mind weighing in? Because again, it's not a great deal of training, but they need to understand what the process is. And there are procedural aspects and there's some legal aspects that come into play here. So give me your thoughts.
I agree. I think the majority is going to be just familiarity and making sure that the administrators who haven't really had a structure for dealing with these kinds of things before will now understand that there is a structure and just becoming familiar with it. And then highlighting those areas that are grievable and that potentially are not grievable. So I can certainly start putting something together, or see if, it's very possible someone in my firm has already done training on this and I can borrow from that. I did want to also just ask, and maybe Dr. Burns can answer, the employee grievance policy has an intermediate step between the principal and the superintendent. And I don't know if that is something that you would recommend here as well, that there's an intermediate level grievance review.
between the supervisor and the superintendent for employees, I do think that would be appropriate. If it served to help resolve the matter, that would be great. I'm trying to imagine how it would be without that, coming straight to the superintendent.
Right, for the students, I don't know who that might be.
No, I don't see a need for the student. I think the student grievance process is very, this will work. And again, it starts with the principal and then goes, it could go to the deputy superintendent, but in the case of New Hanover County, given the size, I think it could come to the superintendent. If it became too unwieldy, then the policy could be reviewed and perhaps put in the intermediate step of going to the deputy superintendent. But I think it would be initially the right thing to do to go from the building level straight to the superintendent. And the superintendent, of course, involves whomever to help investigate and make a determination with respect to the grievance. Which that is somewhat as it is now with the public concern form coming straight to the superintendent's office. And Deborah, as I'm thinking about it, the superintendent is the one making the decision. There's nothing that prohibits the superintendent from involving other folks in that process, such as the deputy superintendent or the directors for elementary or secondary, correct?
Correct, absolutely. And the other question I would have is whether, and maybe it doesn't, what extent does Ethics 360 play into this? I don't know if that would be sufficient to initiate a grievance, and maybe there needs to be some awareness made of how that process works.
I would see the grievance process separate from the Ethics 360 process at the moment. Because this is defined in policy, and as you were sharing, there are matters that are grievable, there are other matters that are not grievable. If there is a matter that is a Title IX violation, potentially, if it's bullying, harassment, things along that line, there is the process in place now, the resolution pathway that we have in place that involves Ethics 360 and the reporting process that's in place and the resolution process, which I see that as separate from a grievance. And I'm thinking again of that low level, the grade issue could be potentially grievable. I don't know that that is best served in an Ethics 360.
And I completely agree. I think that part of the job then of the administration and perhaps my assistants would be to make sure that people understand the difference between the Ethics 360 and the grievance process.
Yes, I would agree.
And Deborah and Dr. Burns, I think that it would be very important for the board to be included in the training so they understand these procedures and this process, because a lot of times we are the ones that get that first email.
Right.
So being able to speak to, no, this is the process, this is where you can go, here are the steps. I would appreciate being, I mean, I'm a short termer, but I still think that it's important to be a part of the training. And then that could go, that could be also part of the onboarding for the new members.
I agree with that.
Yes.
The other thought I have is the grievance policy, of course, is not in place. Had it been in place in the past, the manner in which complaints are resolved or will be resolved might be a little bit different. The policy, I think, is the most important piece. Get that in place, see how that works. There may be a need to adjust the complaint resolution process that we put in place based on the policy and how it works in the future. So that would be something that I would suggest be reviewed perhaps in the springtime. Give us some time to see how the grievance policy works along with the complaint resolution process, and see if there are any adjustments that need to be made, likely in the complaint resolution process, not the policy.
So we definitely will waive first reading for this policy when it's presented in September. Is that correct?
Waive first reading for this?
Pardon?
Did you say we will waive first reading?
Yes, yes. For this one, to get it in place and so that the training.
Well, I think after first reading, we can start the training. I
Yeah.
wouldn't waive first reading with it. I would,
Dr. Burns, you think it's necessary to get it in place as soon as possible, or just wait until October? Get it in September and approve it in October?
It needs to be in place. I think you want to make sure that there is sufficient opportunity for the awareness, the training to occur, questions to be addressed. It could wait until October. I do think it's going to be even more important to have it in place when students return to the building, especially. So you do have some time, but I would want to make certain that you've taken the time for the awareness and the training and any questions to be resolved, and how this will work with the complaint resolution pathway that's in place. So it could be done in September. I'm not sure that, I'm assuming you'd be looking at a second meeting in September for approval, not the September 1 meeting. That might work if all the parts and pieces can come together. And at the next policy meeting in the middle of September, you review the changes. If they're satisfactory, then I think maybe then you make the decision about whether to consider waiving first reading for that second September meeting. And by then there'd be some sense of what the training and support that would be needed could be and should be.
I always just get concerned. Yeah, it has to get put in place as quickly as possible. But if people aren't trained on it, then you have it up, something comes down the pipe right away, and we're violating our own policy because we're not ready to implement it. So
I think you might be able to.
Piece is critical.
Yes, I think you might be in a better position to make that decision when this returns to the policy committee, depending on the changes. And by that time, perhaps Ms. Stagner or one of her colleagues would be in a position to talk with you about what the training would look like and how much time it would take.
So if you set it, so this wouldn't go on the September meeting. Is that what you're saying? September 1st meeting?
I cannot see this ready for the September 1st meeting, correct?
Okay. So then it could go on for the policy meeting in September, and then we could set a work session.
Yeah.
But then it wouldn't have been presented to the general public before then, unless we provide an alternate way of doing so.
I think that my recommendations, so that you have that opportunity for public exposure, is to not waive first reading. If it needs additional time for review, then do that between first reading and second reading. So it could go on for first reading on the September 1st, but it will not be in place until the October meeting or maybe later in September. But I think that gives the public an opportunity to see it. We can start the process of familiarization and developing the training. But that would just be my suggestion.
Well, a related question, for the work sessions, are they expected to be decision-making meetings or information-only meetings?
At
I
one
thought we
time-
called them work sessions so we could make decisions.
At one time, policy said we could not make decisions, didn't vote during those meetings, but we certainly have. But we call them interim meetings.
Yes.
So we could set them as interim meetings so that we could take a vote.
Yes.
Because again, if we're trying to work our way through policy and not take too big of a chunk at a time.
Mhm.
I think that way we could get, and I like Deborah's suggestion, if that's possible, if we put this on for September 1st and adjust as first reading, and then you still bring it back to policy and do any tweakings, and then you could put it on either for the September interim meeting or for October. Either one, you could still start developing that training in that during September. Would there be any problem with that, Deborah, Dr. Burns?
I don't see an issue with it.
I don't, I think that would be
I think
fine.
that's,
And as far as the work set is, as long as notice is properly given, it doesn't really matter what the meeting is called. I think we had some discussion about that at the last, when we reviewed the last policy, and I honestly can't remember where it was landed on, but as long as there's notice that decisions may be made, it's certainly compliant with the open meetings law.
So all the changes will come back, come to the committee, and we'll have it ready for first reading in September. Is that correct?
Ms. Nichols, if you're going to have it for first reading at the September 1 meeting, then the changes would be made to make it mirror 1750.
Yes.
And that would not come back to the policy committee. It would go straight to that board meeting as first reading under that scenario.
So responsibility of the board and Deborah and everyone else is to make sure that what we agreed on today is in place.
I think if I could just suggest McKenna and I can work to make sure that we've, at least our understanding is at the policies, and then distribute them to the committee members, and you can let us know if we've missed anything, and then it can be posted for September.
That work for you, Bill and Nelson?
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
great. That's great.
Okay. So we have all this in place for these two policies. Policy 2130. And this one we had,
The only,
no, 2130. This is the one we had somehow put it for second reading, and it hasn't gone to first reading or had been sent from the committee. So it's one that some major changes that we need to think about. So where it says under B, under the red text, the board chair will monitor expenditures to ensure the expenditures do not exceed the amount of funds budgeted. Now, how is this? This isn't. It's always been the administrative assistant, and
yeah,
probably the board chair may be aware of it, or certainly the finance officer, but how would this work?
Well, I can tell you this board chair isn't aware of what what is in everybody else's account.
yeah, that's, yep.
It's a closely guarded secret with the admin assistant.
Yeah, so this is a big responsibility. And I don't know how you would go about it.
Yeah, let's change that to the administrative assistant or the board secretary, or let's change that, because that's not
Well,
gonna work.
I don't know why.
Just
It
check it
wouldn't
out
be-
altogether.
I don't know why it wouldn't be reported to the entire board. Is that not a? Is it? It's not a it's not a closed session item about what is in the accounts for the board, why would it not come back in a board meeting to say this is where my thought was, and it had that it should be a full board discussion at the beginning of the year and the middle of the year. What conferences you want to attend, what are the lists, so it would take a little bit of time, but to have a full board discussion on who's going to go where, and then from that discussion, when you attend, you come back with a report. So to me, there's some accountability to all of us, and really to each other. So I went here, this is what I've learned. How does it apply to the whole board and to our district? And in practicality, maybe some of it will work better than others, but to go to a conference and then to not bring that knowledge back, some of it is your own internal growth. I get that, but some of it also has to be, what are you bringing back to our district because you went there? Otherwise, why spend the money?
I agree.
1000%. I'd love to. I
So-
think there needs to be language that happens on a biannual basis, and reports are made at the next board meeting upon return. Would that be?
I think that there should be time reserved in the agenda to allow for that to happen. It shouldn't be a 4-hour discussion like what happened one time with one of our board members. I think Jeanette probably remembers.
We all went to sleep.
We did. So, but there should be some accountability, and I think there should be some accountability with the funding. If we have funds to expend, we should also talk about that. Who's spending what and on what. So these aren't our funds; these are public funds. So let's talk about how we're spending them. So I'm sure that and maybe others disagree with me on that, but it's not a lot. Let's talk about what we're doing with them.
Well,
So,
if you think about the superintendent's contract, we limited funding there, so we have to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know how to put that, whether that needs to be in policy or whether that needs to be in practice.
Well,
So-
it does indicate somewhere that the board member will share the information. So that's in
They
there.
have a line there, but I'd like a time frame on it. It says board members who attend a conference, convention, or other professional development activity will provide a report of the event to other board members. Two things there. I think it needs to be at a board meeting.
The board meeting.
An email could be a report. And the other piece is it needs to take place at the next meeting after the person returns.
Or as soon as possible.
Yeah, because I guess if they came back the day before.
Right,
but
right.
Certainly, let's say within, I don't know, what's 45 days of the person's return.
So even if, okay, district meetings, and unfortunately we haven't been able to have those with the storms and COVID, but if the majority of the board members go to the district meeting, is there a board member that's still responsible for sharing, coming back and reporting at the board meeting?
I think so, because you're reporting to the public then.
Okay.
What was the purpose of the board members attending? What did we learn? What's the purpose in going and attending these district meetings? So even if it's a 5-minute update, there's got to be a purpose behind attending.
So we can change a report, provide a report of the event at the board meetings. As soon as,
You want it to be at the next board meeting?
Well,
Right.
like I said, if you just come back from a meeting or a conference, you may not have time to get everything together or get it on the agenda.
That's why I would say within 45 days.
Or you could also say at the next board meeting or as soon as practicable thereafter, or something like that.
That sounds
Yeah.
more Deborish. Good.
And then do we also want to include language about how that board members, that time will, something to the effect of time will be that
Yes,
at the beginning of every year, and at the middle of year, board members will meet, is that biannually, to discuss conferences and conventions that board members will attend?
Yes.
so that goes into some of the other changes here. But let's go back up to the board chair monitoring expenditures. We want to take care of that. How are we going to do that?
You might have just, someone from, I assume that the finance officer or someone in her department
Mhm.
would have those records and it could just be reported to the board, on a
Yes.
regular, once a year, twice a year, however often.
Yes, I like that much better.
So the board's administrative assistant as well as the finance department, because they can work in tandem to make sure that everything's reported. Because finance would not necessarily know until they get the bill.
But ultimately, the finance officer, I think, would know. So the finance officer will provide, the finance department will provide maybe a biannual
Well,
accounting.
I would tie those together. I would say, on a biannual basis, the board will meet to discuss conferences. And during that meeting, the board will also the finance officer will also update board members and the public with regards to their, financial accounting, their travel reimbursements or their travel funds, I guess.
Right. So the reimbursements would be, the reimbursed amounts get turned into the admin assistant. So that could be included in item number 2. So certainly that does get included, that does get turned into the to the admin assistant. But then ultimately that gets turned into finance.
Mhm. Yeah, it goes through Tabitha.
Right. So, I mean, you can include that part, that all reimbursements, all requests for reimbursements will be turned into the board admin assistant.
Where exactly are you looking?
Under item number 2. I don't know that it specifies where you go with that. I mean, that you may not need to specify that. People may figure that out, but
Okay, so down in section D, it says board member, it's the process for reimbursement. Board members should submit requests for reimbursement along with supporting documentation of the expenses within 30 days of incurring the expenses. So do you want that to specify who they're submitting it to? It has,
where's that?
so yeah, the whole process is down here. You might want to change some of this language too. In D1.
Yeah, because I don't approve anybody else's travel.
Yeah, that goes back up to B1. We've got a lot of changes and thoughts there to talk about.
Okay, so do you want to delete the part that says be signed by, delete the part that says be approved by the board chair?
Mhm.
Yes,
Definitely.
or vice chair.
Right.
And I don't know that we have advanced, have we ever allowed advanced or fund, fund advance?
I don't recall any, but, and I can't imagine why you would if you.
Yes, actually.
Oh,
The
you
first
did
time-
for Apple, didn't you?
No, I didn't. Judy, the first
Yeah.
time we traveled to Raleigh, got in advance because I paid for my hotel, and she was like, "Oh, why didn't you just get it advanced?" So I didn't know you could. Yeah, so we have done
Okay.
that before.
Okay, all right, so I guess we need to leave that in there.
I wouldn't.
I would run all this by the finance department, the process for reimbursement and travel advances, because I'm not comfortable making these changes without the person who is responsible for this part looking at it. Because
Good
I know
idea.
that they have certain processes in place. And so I would feel much more comfortable with them making the changes rather than us hacking away at it. I mean, not to be blunt, but I don't actually do this very much because none of us have traveled for months and months. So I think that they have made changes. So I would really appreciate actually Mary Hazel looking at this and then getting it to the person that does the travel reimbursements. And then they could definitely say, okay, this is what we do, this is what we don't do. So would that be okay for everyone?
It would me.
Yeah.
I would just like to know if somebody's, hit the, spent all their money, travel money, who tells them that? Or does anyone tell us?
Well, Tabitha normally would have, and in the past, and it says in here too, if you use your money and someone else on the board will share their funds with you, you can do that.
Mhm.
But they give written permission according to this. And before it was just verbal, yes, go ahead and do it. But I agree with Lisa. We need finance to look at this and make sure that we're not giving them responsibility that they don't want, or they can provide a better venue for keeping the records.
But if somebody had spent all their money and wanted to go on another trip, is Tabitha the one that would tell them no, or that they need to ask one of the other board members for money?
Well, you would know. If you're a responsible board member and you've charted out the opportunities, and you know how much they're going to cost, you would know whether you've spent more. But if you, in the past, when someone's gone to state and they've gone to national, they've pretty well used their money. But something that we haven't addressed in here in the old policy, it talked about unused funds and how you could roll them over. And that's what some people did, knowing that they wanted to, if they knew the topics were something that they thought the board could benefit from, they saved their money and rolled it over. So this is not in here at all. So
We
go
also
back
had,
to B about the, what about rolling over the funds?
yeah, we
Okay.
also had a provision in there for allowing board members to transfer funds to different departments. So we had a kind of a special provision in there that if like, for example, I've transferred funds to pay for subs before in special ed.
Mm-hmm.
So so we did have that in there as well in the old policy.
I don't, I don't want it to be so cumbersome that people say it's not worth trying to go anywhere because I have to go through all this. And this is why under B1, where it says that if you're going to go within state, you have to get permission from the board chair. And if you're going out of state, you have to get permission from the whole board. That's, I don't know, that just doesn't seem necessary. And the chair, again, is going to be really busy.
Well, I think that's why we talk, if we talk about it ahead of time, that I guess would lead to that whole, that you basically got permission. If the board talks about it as a whole, yes, these are the conferences and conventions that we're going to go to. And these, and this is just going to, that would be that basically permission. So we just talked about number 4 under D, number 4, taking that out, be approved by the board chair. But I do think there has to be some awareness of from the rest of the board who is going where.
Oh, I agree.
So if you have that whole board discussion of, you know, what conferences and conventions are available and who is going to go, and then you have an awareness, the whole board has an awareness of who has what in their account. Because I'll be honest, I never knew. I've never known. I have to keep calling Tabitha, hey, what's in my account? And I never spent much, but I didn't think that was a very efficient process. So I think it's also being efficient with understanding what do you have, who's going where, what's available, getting those listings of conferences and conventions, and understanding that some things are going to pop up at the last minute. And then having another discussion of who wants to attend and what the purpose is. So those aren't bad discussions. It's all about, like, again, you know, just what's the value of them, like we do with the field trips. You know, what's the value of those field trips? I think it's the same, to me, it's the same concept here. Are we getting any further with the with what to actually write down, McKenna, or no?
You're muted.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, for B1, we can get rid of that middle paragraph about how you're going to get approval, and then instead I'll add language about how you're going to have on a biannual basis, the board will meet to discuss what conferences are available and which board members will attend, or something about that. And then and also that the finance officer will give a report of what funds are available for each board member, or something to that.
And what about unused funds? Do we want to roll them over? Nelson, Bill,
Yeah.
You talking about rolling them over and keeping
Yeah, I
it?
think we should keep rolling them over.
Okay.
I think we don't have that in there. Do we want to put it back?
Does that need to be in policy?
I think it should be, and I think you should have a limit, to be honest.
Limit of what you roll over or what you're going to receive?
Like, there should be an upper limit of how much you can roll over and keep, because otherwise, like, say, I don't know, say.
Yeah, there was 5,000.
Yeah, I think that we should keep that.
Ms. Nichols and board members, if I could interject a technical aspect. I don't know how this might have been handled in the past. These would be local funds, and you can carry them forward from one year to the next. I do believe they have to be reserved as assigned fund balance from one year to the next for use in the subsequent year. And I think I'd want the finance officer to take a look at that process as well. And the reason is that will show up in your annual financial report as a reservation, as an assigned portion of your fund balance. And you do have other assigned areas, but I don't know how this would be handled unless it's specifically addressed as board member travel or board member expenses.
Okay.
So I would suggest that Mary Hazel take a look at that part as well.
So I can try to make these changes and then you can give it to the finance officer for her input too.
Yes, McKenna, that would be great.
Okay. Do you want to put a limit on the amount you're rolling over? I missed that. What was the number?
It was 5,000 before.
Per total or per board member?
I don't think you should ever have more than 5,000.
Well,
Yeah, what is it, 2,500, 2,400 a year? I think the most it should ever be is double what your original allotment is.
well, and what did we offer the superintendent? His was what, 25? So we shouldn't get more than he. But yeah, no more than 5,000 for sure.
Okay. So you want to allow rolling over of unused funds, but the amount in the account shall never exceed 5,000? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay.
So I think we need to also check with Mary Hazel about how much we actually get, because it seems like we're all kind of confused on that.
Well, we haven't, like you said, we haven't had a chance to go anywhere.
No, we haven't.
A picky thing, McKenna.
Yeah.
In most of the policies, you're saying chairperson.
Mm-hmm.
Here, you're just saying board chair. Does it make any difference that we're not consistent?
No, but I usually really like to be consistent, so
Okay, so in this one, we're
to
just
board
making it
chairperson.
quite a few places. So we'll look at those.
Okay, I'll change that.
I thought you did. Okay, so we've taken care of providing a report of to other board members. That will be in our 2 meetings a year when we're having discussion. And we've already got the wording for that. Okay, so if you look on page 2 under meals, C, the board chair may authorize reasonable meal costs and excess. Do you have that responsibility, Lisa? If I want a steak instead of a hamburger, can you tell me I can have it?
I'm sorry, I only allow vegan meals.
Right. I'm in trouble. So is that pertinent to keep in there?
No, I have not authorized any meals in my time as board chair, so I'm not sure what that means.
That necessary, Deborah?
Well, I'm not sure when that might come up unless there is a conference at a very expensive, high cost location. It's really up to the board whether this is something that is going to be delegated to the board chair to make decisions on, or whether it's a decision by the whole board, or whether you're just going to hold everyone to a certain set of rules, regardless of the exceptions. I can't imagine this is an item that comes up very often.
Well, and I thought we got per diem anyway.
Yeah.
If it's per diem, then you really, if you want to eat ramen and keep the extra, I mean, that's sort of the idea of a per diem. It's a set amount and you get to either go under or over, your choice.
Yeah, I mean, can we say that it's per diem? I mean, can we specify that whatever the governmental per diem is what you get paid?
Yes, you certainly can do that.
All right, why don't we just do that, and then that takes the guesswork out of it.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Do you have a per diem for lodging as well, or just for meals?
We have
Um,
lodging.
Meals. I think it's just meals.
I don't
know
think
we
we've
do,
ever
yeah.
set a per, I don't think we've ever set a per diem for lodging, but I think it seems like everywhere we, like, I know Raleigh, there are a few, there's usually a hotel where we go that has that allows the per diem rate, the governmental per diem rate. So I don't see it as an issue. But again, I don't know we haven't traveled in so long. So, I mean, would that make sense to the board? And I apologize for the background noise right now. I have 5 adult children in the background and 2 dogs. So there's a lot of background noise right now at my house. But would that make sense that we reimburse at the per diem rate, or is that too restrictive?
It's too, I think that's too restrictive.
Okay,
I
for
mean,
the hotel.
It's bad. When I've traveled for Cape Fear Community College, it's a really low rate. And I mean, I don't see, I with our board at least, I don't see that it's been an issue.
Okay,
I think
but
people
for me, for meals, are you okay?
yeah, oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so
Per diem for
leave
meals.
hotel. Okay, leave hotel the way it is, but then meals do the per diem rate.
Yes.
I would.
Okay.
The hotel one, it says hotel reservations will be scheduled through the superintendent's office. Is that how you do it or no?
Yes.
I don't think we always do it that way, though. I mean, a lot of times I'll just do my own hotel reservation and then just turn in my reimbursement rate or my expenses.
Do you want to just get rid of that sentence and just not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, because it talks about prepaid. So yeah, that one. So now, under C on meals on page 42, about does that take care of it when we say the per diem for meals? You don't have to approve anything, Lisa. David will let you eat vegan.
Do what?
Nothing. Go ahead.
My vegan meals.
Yeah.
I just go to Whole Foods when I travel. Makes it easy.
All right. So that particular paragraph we don't need, or what are we going to say rather?
For the meals.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Deborah, can you help with that? Just to say that, take off that last paragraph and say that the meals will be reimbursed at the governmental per diem rate. Maybe.
Oh, the first sentence, a total daily allowance for meals at the
I think so.
government.
I think you could, yeah, you could probably just replace both of those paragraphs with language about per diem. Because if you're not getting reimbursed for actual expenses.
How about, so the first sentence says the total daily allowance for meals while traveling overnight on official school system business will be limited to the current state allowances. Do you want to just change that to say daily allowance for meals while traveling overnight on official school system business will be provided at the current government per diem rate?
Why does it have to be overnight?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. If you're traveling all day, you're going to have to eat.
I think that's because for Deborah, isn't it for tax purposes if it's overnight travel?
I do not know the rules on that.
I'm pretty
But that's
sure the
something-
overnight has to do with tax purposes.
And that's something that maybe, again, Mary, the finance officer may need to weigh in on.
Do you want to remove the overnight part?
Remove it for now, I think, and then just make a note to have Mary Hazel look at it. I don't get that last sentence. The vice chair may authorize excess meal costs incurred by the board chair.
Well, that's because you can't. I was gonna say, that's why I said David may not let you just have vegan.
One of the past board chairs may have been a real steak eater.
Could have.
What's that? Not filet mignon, but that Wagyu steak. Goodness. Okay.
Oh,
Okay. So we'll just have a simple statement here with meals once Mary Hazel gives us some advice. How about the alcoholic beverages? Is that still, should that be in there just to make sure people know and the community who reads these policies know we don't pay for a beer or whatever, wine?
It says it in C, alcoholic beverages are not reimbursed.
That's what I'm saying. Should we leave that
Yeah.
in there somehow? If we take it,
Yes.
okay.
Oh, okay, you can, but you're not actually reimbursing for any meals anymore. You're giving a per diem allotment. I mean,
oh, that's a good point.
Alrighty.
Yeah, good luck finding something worth a sip on that per diem.
Stop by Trader Joe's huh? Or Whole Foods. Right? Okay. So, anything else on that page for anyone? Okay, on page 3, let's see, if you, under C1, where it talks about if a board member wants to purchase something, they have to notify the board chair and superintendent if the price is greater than $50.
I don't know. Honestly, I would just leave that. I've never heard of this coming up.
I haven't either, but do you think the superintendent or the chair wants to get involved with? Suppose you need that.
I mean, I guess it's so unusual that, yeah, notify the board chair. I've never heard of that.
Well, I do recall a board member years ago, her shredder was not working and they couldn't get her one fast enough from central office. So she went and bought one and there was an issue about that because she chose a much more pricey one. So, but if you,
I didn't know I could get I bought a shredder. I didn't know I could get reimbursed for it. Never really crossed my mind.
I
I
know,
get paid
but
like $6
okay,
a day or whatever to be on the board. So after a month, I bought a shredder.
yeah, I bought mine as well. So, Lisa, board chair,
Yes,
superintendent.
ma'am.
We'll keep those in there.
I'm not sure why it would be necessary to purchase merchandise or other products to carry out official school business, or why we need to be notified. Wouldn't that be a notification of the finance officer? Because you would have to make the request of reimbursement to the finance officer. So I mean, I'm struggling with that one.
I am too. I just,
I don't know, honestly, the military, as I was saying, you can what if these things to death. I would probably just get rid of this or leave it as is. I just don't see it as necessary.
I don't either.
Deborah, can you help with this one?
Well, I think that, certainly the board would have the option to, you could just delete that whole section if you don't anticipate that the board would approve reimbursement for personal or for merchandise or products. Now, I don't know what is provided to board members as a matter of course, but I've never seen this come up. I'm trying to imagine what it might be.
You could create a policy for almost any, any scenario, which is it's not really necessary. So.
Yeah, I don't,
I mean, it just says that the board member should notify the board chair. That doesn't mean that the board chair and superintendent could stop them. So that's what makes me uncomfortable. Hey, I'm gonna buy, I feel like I need, like you said, I need a shredder, and I have to have one for school business. I'm gonna go buy one. That kind of bothers me.
mhm.
So you can still deny the reimbursement request, but where's the mechanism for denial or approval? Does that rest with the board chair and superintendent? That doesn't make that clear. So
if you get rid of it, people have to buy their own shredders. And
that's kind of what I'm thinking. If you get rid of it, then there's no mechanism, right?
Yeah.
There's no question.
And if they get themselves in that situation, then that's their problem. So let's take out one if Deborah says that's okay.
I think that's fine to take out one.
Okay.
And you have the same sort of concerns about number 2.
I was gonna say, get rid of 2. I was just gonna say, yeah, let's get rid of 2 as well.
Yeah, because my answer would just be no.
Yeah, so let's just get rid of.
Good, because I already had a question about that. So take that one out as well. Okay, that's good. So all the reimbursements and all, Mary Hazel will help us with the process. Travel advances. Okay. So anything else? And there are a lot of just chairs in this one, McKenna, so I'm sure you'll catch every one of them to make them chairperson.
Yes.
Anything else on 2130?
I think we beat that horse.
Well, it's important because this is one that board members will certainly be looking at, and it has to be clear and fair.
Yeah, and I really think a lot of it, to me, should be tied to, if you want to include the board chair, it has to also go through the finance department.
Mhm.
And I don't know that we've done that enough. So the finance department has to be heavily involved in this. But I think approval of the board chair, it leads to problems.
I do too. Okay, so we look forward to, so all of this will come back to us, but we'll still put it on for first reading in September. Is that correct?
If the policy committee wants the input of the finance officer, then I might suggest that this come back to the policy committee first. I don't know that this is one that's urgent, so urgent it needs to go for first read until those details have been hashed out.
I agree. I appreciate that.
You can probably wait till there's a vaccine.
Okay, so Mary Hazel will, and I'm assuming Deborah, you will be working with Mary Hazel on this.
So I'll get McKenna's changes and then I can send it to Mary Hazel for review and ask for her input.
Okay, that's wonderful. Alrighty, so we'll be back on our agenda for our September 8th meeting, policy committee meeting. Okay, 2210, duties of officers. I didn't have any questions on page 1, but page 2.
Yeah, I had We don't have a chairperson pro tem or a secretary. We don't elect those positions.
No, we don't.
So I mean, and I don't want to start.
No, the superintendent is your secretary by
Okay.
just by statute.
And the pro tem, is that?
That's just if you didn't have the chair or the vice chair at a meeting, if they were both absent from the meeting, it's just saying that the board will elect somebody who's going to be the chair just for that meeting only, because there's no chair or vice chair.
Okay. Well, we don't elect one. Are we required to by statute?
No, so what would you do if the chair and the vice chair were both unavailable at a meeting?
I think we just defer to our senior member. I mean, that's never come up.
Have the meeting.
You not have the meeting. Okay, I mean, we can get rid of this section if you don't want it. That's fine.
No, just the chairperson pro tem, I would.
Okay.
Yes. What did you say, Nelson? Just take out C, I think. That way it's just common sense. If both of them are missing, then we decide if we're going to have the meeting, who's going to conduct it. Is that correct?
I couldn't hear that, Miss Nichols. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry too. I'm looking to the side. I was wondering what Nelson was saying.
I said, I will just take out the that first sentence, the designated officers of the board. It should just be the chairperson, the vice chairperson, and the secretary. Although if the secretary is the superintendent, you might want to just say that.
Well, here's so are you saying we can delete C, duties of the chairperson pro tem?
See?
You certainly can, but if, again, as McKenna said, if you have the board chair and the chair are both absent, then there should be some mechanism to have someone run the meeting.
Okay, so we just leave that in there. So
in case there's something urgent.
Okay, under D though, I did have some questions where it says, our board administrative assistant, Tabitha, or previous ones, have always taken the minutes. It says the superintendent keeps the minutes, and it says if he is excluded from closed session, then we have to choose a member of the board. We've never done this.
By law, the superintendent has those duties as secretary. So even though the superintendent may delegate to an administrative assistant to take the minutes, if it's his responsibility ultimately under the law. And so I think that's why that's written that way. I know that for many, at least in my experience, when the superintendent is excluded from the meeting, the board attorney would keep the minutes unless, I can't imagine the board having a meeting without either the attorney or the superintendent. I suppose it's possible, but someone has to keep the minutes.
So can we say in the first sentence, the superintendent or designee shall keep the minutes?
I think saying ensure that the minutes are kept is fine, because no matter what he's ensuring or she's ensuring that the minutes are kept.
I think.
Ms. Dagner, you went mute.
I'm sorry, I think that's fine to say that, and McKenna, do you have any disagreement with that? The superintendent shall ensure that meetings of the board are kept.
I think McKenna might be mute.
Sorry, yeah. Do you want to change that next sentence then about in the event of a the superintendent not being there? That one of the board members is going to serve temporarily as secretary? Do you want to change that?
I think so, because if the board remembers, one of our meetings, closed session meetings, we had minutes that weren't really the way we thought they should have been written. And I don't know that we should have that responsibility given to a board member.
Okay, so I'm looking at the statute and it says, provided that in the event of a vacancy in the superintendency, the board may elect one of its members to serve temporarily as secretary to the board.
Okay, board, what do you think?
Yep, it's fine.
I mean, I think that in a very real sense, if there is you will always have a superintendent or an interim superintendent or an acting superintendent. So so that person holding that position will be the secretary, will be serving as the secretary to the board.
But if the superintendent is excluded from the closed session,
Right.
do we really want a board member to take the minutes? Would we not have an attorney in there if we are?
I mean, I think that's, in my experience, that's how it would work. Although if the attorney is not there, then a board member, someone needs to keep the minutes.
But if you are discussing something about the superintendent, wouldn't the board definitely want an attorney in there or someone to guide you?
I would certainly think so.
So wouldn't we?
Delete that sentence.
You could, I think you could.
Yes, that would work.
And again, because as McKenna said, it's in the statute, so you don't really have to have that sentence again in board policy.
So all of the numbers as secretary to the board, the superintendent shall, would all these work with what we've just deleted? Yeah, I don't see anything in there that, let's see. Okay. Nelson, Bill,
No, I'm
I'm
fine.
fine with it.
okay. Okay, so this one, few changes, not much. So this one should be ready for first reading in September. Agree?
Agree.
I think so.
The next one is board committees, 2230.
The only question I had on this one was I don't see a lot of our standing committees, all of our standing committees, we develop them. And I don't see anywhere that explains how we put committee members on there. or community members. So, you know, for EDI, we have community members. I don't see anything that says how we're going to assign those community members to the committee, how long the term of service will be. And I think we probably need something there.
Well, it does on some of them, but not, I think the advisory.
By EDI, the committee is comprised of 2 board members as well as staff and community members. And I think EDI had an interview process. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Billier, earlier in the paragraph A, it says the chairperson of each committee and the board members of that committee will be named by the chairperson. So, I guess, well, board has been added. I think previously it said and members of that committee. So does the chair name them?
Well, sometimes.
Okay.
I think we did that with Title IX. I think we went around and figured out who we needed to put with EDI. They elected them.
We actually, what we did was I designated 3 chairs. So it was, we had equal weight in the decision. So we had an application process, excuse me. And from the application process, we chose members. But I would say that for EDI, it is an organic process. And that's one thing that we are kind of reconsidering, because I think that what you find is over time, the number of voices around the table shrink. So and the reason I'm bringing that up is I don't know that I want to quantify that in policy, because then you're stuck with it.
True.
I mean, if you think it's important, I can also see the other side of it as per usual. So you want someone to make the commitment and say, yeah, I'm going to stick with this for a certain amount of time. But the problem is then if you don't, if you're going to say yes, it's 2 years, then I would say then you would also say, but if you miss a certain number of meetings, the committee reserves the right to replace you. So I think that if you have that time commitment, then you also have the ability to remove the person if they don't show up. So either way, I can see it working. But
And
that might be something that the committee. Go ahead.
Do we want to standardize how we select community members to get onto these committees? Because I can see where somebody's going to say, well, you know, you knew this person, you had this friend. I don't know. Do we want to standardize how we're getting those community members?
I think that's tough because you're going to be reaching into different parts of the community.
Right.
So I don't know that you can do that. I think that has to be left up to the committees.
Yeah. Okay.
To me. But the time limit thing, I think, is a pertinent discussion.
Yeah,
and I honestly don't know how to answer that one.
Yeah, I don't either.
But here we are just introducing the committees to the public. So how you go about getting the members other than the board members that are appointed could be on the website under each of these committees, just as we have with the appointment to Cape Fear Community College. That's in detail there.
Well, initially it does say the board chair has the right to appoint, does it not? So the board chair has the right to appoint, I think, the committee. Does the board chair have the right to appoint the chair of the committee, I think is the question. Or is that up to the committee members to decide? What do y'all think?
I think it needs to be the board chair's decision.
I think that too. That way you can as the chair, you can look at your board members, you know, where their interests are, where their skills are, and divide them up so that each committee has an effective leader.
Okay, so then if it's left up to the board chair to decide who the chair of the committee is, then that chair of that committee, I think, works with the rest of the committee members maybe to work on them, work on the makeup, work on, you know, the what community members are included, what the length of the term is, and then that goes back to the board maybe for approval, and then that goes on the website.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
So do you want that included in the policy?
Well, I think it needs to be somewhere about the chair, appointing the chairperson for each committee.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Oh, I don't know why, but anyway, I'm looking sideways, I guess. Speaking sideways. I think, do we have in there where the chairperson
Mhm.
chooses the chairperson of each committee?
It currently says that the board chairperson appoints the chairperson of the committee and appoints the board members on that committee. And then, but it doesn't address anything about community members or other members.
So that's all we need, is to make sure that chairperson selects the chair of the committee, chairperson of the committee, and the appointing the board members that will be assigned, whether they're either 2 or 3 board members.
Mhm.
Okay. So if you please look on page 1 under 1, the Budget Development Committee. Initially, years ago, we only had 3 board members on that committee. And if 2 wanted, and I've said this before, if 2 board members wanted to take something off, they did, and the whole board never knew that it was an item for consideration. So in the past 2 or 3 years, we've had the whole board to attend the development committee meeting, and the text from the old policy, I think, works better, because the board chairperson may determine to utilize a budget committee or the entire board in reviewing the superintendent's proposed budget.
Yeah, this is an old version. I made that change. So we at the last committee meeting, we changed it to say the committee is comprised of all members of the board and is assisted by the administrative staff at the direction of the superintendent or designee.
Okay, so what we're looking at is not the revised of the revised.
Yeah, apparently what you're looking at doesn't have the changes that I made after the last committee meeting.
Oh, okay. Because I
I
knew we had talked about it and had agreed, but okay. So don't you think it's imperative that all board members get a chance to be a part of the process?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so.
But I remember I thought that's why this was back on. So I'm sure we just got the wrong copy.
Was there anything else then on the other copy that McKenna that is not on this one?
I'm not sure. I can't see all of the copy you're looking at, so I don't recall making other changes though. Do you?
I don't have my old copy handy.
This was the big issue.
I think that might have been the only change from last meeting.
Now, on page 4, C, the ad hoc committees. I do recall our former superintendent did appoint board members to be on an ad hoc committee. Is this something that we want to think about, or is it only the chairperson that can do this? Title IX was one of them, wasn't it, Nelson?
And no, it wasn't Title IX. It was the dress code committee.
Dress code, but I thought there was another one as well that he, I thought it was Title IX. When you brought that up, he suggested you and whomever else.
No,
Yeah.
that was Chairwoman Eastep. When I brought that up, she said that she would
Okay.
like.
Okay, so the dress code.
Yes. And
Of
that-
which, as I mentioned to Mr. Rivenbark, that's still tabled, and we want to continue to table it for a long time, because until children are in the buildings, we certainly don't want to be talking about dress code. Okay. So,
And the suggestion, I believe, came from Dr. Markley, but the chairperson, the suggestion of creating the committee came from Dr. Markley. The chairperson, Chairwoman Eastep, she appointed, and he recommended myself and Judy, but she still appointed us.
okay,
It was his recommendation, but he doesn't have the power to appoint us.
okay, so we don't add superintendent here, we just keep it as the chairperson. Is that
Yes.
correct, Deborah?
Yes, that's what I would recommend. The board,
Okay.
the superintendent can certainly make recommendations, but I think it's the board chair that would be making the decisions and the appointments for the board.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay. Anything else on this particular policy? And then McKenna, if you can send us the one that does correct the budget development committee information so that we can
Yes.
see that, okay?
Sure.
Okay. 4329, bullying.
So this one is actually, will be in the manual with, well, it's actually in two places. It's in with all the student behavior policies, like code of conduct type policies, and then also in employee, in the employee section too. But the reason I'm sending this now is just because, so you have all the Title IX policies that you're adopting and all the related like anti-discrimination policies. So this kind of goes along with that. This is about behavior that would be bullying or harassing behavior, but it does not rise to the level of Title IX prohibited sexual harassment, or it's not discrimination or harassment based on a protected class like race, color, national origin, disability, or religion. Because if it were that type of discrimination, it would be handled in accordance with the discrimination and harassment prohibited by federal law policy. This is for other harassing or bullying behavior that isn't covered, is not prohibited by federal law, but is still prohibited in your school system.
On page 5, you just mentioned the code of student conduct. On G1, where under students, it says the superintendent or designee shall list in the code of students' conduct the range of consequences. Do we have that, a code of conduct with all of this information? Don't know that we call ours the code of conduct. Student
You should
handbook.
have a code of conduct. Just, I mean, state law requires you to have a code of student conduct. It's not necessarily a board policy. It's usually, it can be something that the superintendent.
So I just have a quick question. Unless the law has changed dramatically in the last month or two at the state level, which I don't think it has. I know at the federal level, and I believe at the state level, transgender students are not protected from discrimination, harassment. Can we make a policy that incorporates something like that? Can we do something like that in our policy to protect against a specific type of bullying and harassment, even though that is not a state or federal protection? Ms. Dagner?
I mean, you have that is behavior based on sex. You can have, you already have that in the policy. Bullying or harassing behavior based on sex is prohibited. I know that in the realm of the Title VII, and the Supreme Court has just said that that means that transgender employees are protected. So I don't know whether you feel like behavior based on sex, harassing behavior based on sex is sufficient. I think it certainly can be interpreted that way. McKenna, have you addressed that?
It says here in B3, bullying or harassing behavior includes conduct, blah, 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 differentiating personal characteristics. It prohibits conduct that is or reasonably appears to be motivated by actual or perceived differentiating personal characteristics. Differentiating personal characteristics include but are not limited to race, color, religion, ancestry, national origin, gender, socioeconomic status, academic status, gender identity, appearance, sexual orientation.
Okay. Got that. Great.
I mean, that's basically saying it. You can't.
No, I didn't see.
Any reason.
I didn't see that in there. Great.
That was a good point, though, Nelson. Make sure.
Ms. Nichols, to your prior question, New Hanover County does not have a code of conduct for students. You do have policy 8410, which is the procedures, which serves as a code of conduct, and it does list the potential consequences. So the title is different in your current policy as opposed to what is in the policy that's being recommended here.
So should we use the title that we have in place so that when parents are looking for it, they won't be looking for code of student conduct?
That would be that'd be appropriate. It's policy 8410. It's kind of long. Policies, rules, and procedures relative to student discipline in the New Hanover County schools.
Or should we align it all to state statute? Does state statute say you have to have a code of student conduct? Is that what it says exactly?
I think so, but let me pull it up.
So we could change the other policy to mimic what the state statute says you have to have.
So state law says board policies shall include or provide for the development of a code of student conduct that notifies students of standards or behaviors expected of them, conduct that may subject them to discipline in the range of disciplinary measures that may be used by school officials. Like state law uses that term, code of student conduct. That's.
So I think we should probably change to that so that it is clear that we are adhering to state statutes.
And that should not be a problem to change 8410's title when we get to that point, or.
And then it sounds like we need to develop more of a backside to 8410. Is that what you're saying, Dr. Burns?
No, ma'am, I think it's okay as it is. It does have the consequences listed in the first section.
Okay.
I do think it would be appropriate to review all of 8410 to be sure that it's current.
Okay.
If we're adopting this now, not now, don't we need the change? Wouldn't it be best to change the title of 8410 before we adopt this policy? Because there'll be a lag period where we have no actual code of conduct. So if it's not that big a deal to change it, let's change it before we adopt the policy or at the same time.
Mr. Bowyer, I think you could certainly do that. I'm looking at the revision history. The last time this policy was revised was in 2014. And it also cross-references with student substance abuse. My speculation is there would need to be a good bit of change to this. Ms. Stagner, what would you think?
I agree. It certainly, if it has not been updated since 2014, by my recollection, there have been numerous changes to the statutes governing student conduct. And that will be a process that you will want input from me, from I'm sure McKenna. You have the standard policy from the School Board Association. I think administrators, we would want the input from administration. Is there a way to flag and make clear that policy 8410 is the code of student conduct without necessarily revisiting that policy until it's ready to be reviewed? Whether by just making a different note on the website or something like that.
That would be the easiest thing to do, I think. When the handbooks are published and on the website, yeah, let me have a conversation about that. That's a great suggestion.
Because there are a number of, as you're going through this, there will always be a number of references in policies that you haven't quite caught up to in other policies that you're revising. And I think that's why the overlap time is a little difficult. You have the old policies and the new policies at the same time. McKenna, is there a chart that shows that's posted somewhere on that site?
There's the correlation tables, but we should post those on the website. We should post those. I guess we can post them on Microscribe.
And that way, if someone goes to look at policies, they can see the correlation table and go and cross-check to see if there's something that has been adopted already.
Yeah, I'll see about if there's a way to get that posted on Microscribe, the correlation tables.
McKenna, Microscribe, would that be where the introduction for the old policy, the new policy manual is found when you go to the website for New Hanover County?
So, okay, that introduction statement, is that on your website?
Yeah, we've got that on, when I go into the policy, if you could add it there. In fact, that would be a great thing if you could put the correlation table there.
Okay. So who handles posting on your website?
I can handle that piece, but I'm looking at the policy service that you guys provide.
Right.
So I'm wondering, because when you click on policies for New Hanover County Schools, it takes you to either old or new. And if under old policy manual, somewhere in there, if there's a link to recent modifications to board policies, you could also include a link to the correlation table.
Yeah.
Right? Wouldn't that work?
Yeah, I'll talk to them about doing that.
Yeah, and I'll handle our website with respect to 8410 and whatever we need to do for that. I think that would be a great thing if you could have the correlation table as a link for both old and new policies.
Dr. Burns, on page 6, I notice about the posting at the beginning of school year for this particular policy, and that, so that again needs to be in the when we're training and talking about?
Yes, correct.
There's a lot to be done before.
Your principals are very aware of the need to notify and notify folks and provide the documents regarding the student behavior expectations. And so that has been a practice, and that's part of what the schools distribute and make available to families. So that won't be new, but we can certainly remind them of that.
Okay. Well, because we do have new principals and leaders. Just want to make sure that we're serving everyone as efficiently as possible. So guess what? That was the last one for today.
All right.
So, now, Deborah, we need your guidance. We know which ones are going to need some changes, and so how do we vote to move forward with all of these?
So maybe I can just recap. We have 1730 that will be on for first reading. 1750 and 1740 will be on for first reading, but they may have to come back to the policy committee in September. 2130 is not going for first reading. We're going to wait and get the input of the finance officer on that one. 2210 will be on for first reading. 2230, McKenna is going to get the revised version, and that will go on for first reading. And then 4329 will go on for first reading. So I think that you can have a motion to move forward for first reading all of the policies that were reviewed today, with the exception of 2130.
All right, I will make the motion to move forward the policies that were reviewed today, with the exception of policy 2130. Mr. Boyer.
Second.
Second, Mr. Ravenmore.
Those in favor of the motion?
Mr. Boyer, aye.
Mr. Ravenmore, aye.
Ms. Nichols, aye. So they will be on for first reading, and then we will get the revisions as soon as possible. And
yes. So McKenna and I will work to get those revised policies. I'll get Mary Hazel's input, and then I'll make sure that Dr. Burns gets them to get posted for the agenda.
And so the 25A, we won't get to that one tonight if we stop at policy with 15 policies. So by that time, we should be able to get 25A posted. Is that correct? 2500A.
So that will be on for September 1st.
Yes.
Yes, I think so, and I think that's that one. That will be on for second reading, won't, or no?
Well, it would help if
It would be helpful to get that one approved.
yes, yes. But we have to get it before the board. We don't
Yes.
have it tonight.
Yes.
So, but as soon as if we receive it, then it could be sent out to the board ahead of time, even before it's on the agenda. Or not.
We can do that, or we can just get it posted and let everyone know it's posted on Assembly.
Okay, that'll work. Okay. So is there anything else that we need to talk about? And Lisa and Dr. Burns, we really appreciate your participation and staying with us through the whole meeting. Was a big help. And Dr. Burns, we appreciate all that you've done.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. I do appreciate it as well.
Yeah. Okay, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn, Mr. Boyer.
Second, Mr. Rivenborough.
There's a motion to adjourn. Those in favor?
Aye, Mr. Rivenborough.
And I, Mrs. Nichols. Thank you all so much. Well,
Thank you.
be
Good
most
night.
night. Thank you, McKenna.